Hi everyone, this is Sean and welcome back to my channel. I have about 5 minutes to spare. I am on my way to work. I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold. If you hear me cough, sniffle, or sneeze on this video, please forgive me. Please, if you like this video, like it, subscribe if you're not yet subscribed, and share if you find that there's somebody at your workplace, a friend or family member that can benefit from these videos. If you want to use this particular video as a training video for your organization, I have no problem with you doing so. But just keep in mind, this is not per se training. This is just an informational video. This is not my professional advice. It's not my legal advice. And I can't give legal advice because I'm not an attorney. So we are going to dwell today on burglary alarms or intrusion alarms. And what is a proper response to such alarm? Now, I will tell you that the statistics drive the momentum on how we respond to such alarms. For example, it's estimated that between 94 and 98% of burglary alarms or intrusion alarms are false. They're false. It's my experience that it's about 99.5, maybe 99.9% of the time that they are false. Knowing that most of them are false, should we take the additional risk? Well, let's face it, unarmed security costs less than armed security. So if 94 to 98% of the alarms are false, and my experience is 99.9% of the alarms are false, do we really need armed security? And we need to dwell on that a bit further. Let me say this. These alarms are called burglary alarms. Burglary. You want to know what a burglary is? It's a break-in. It's an unlawful entry inside of a structure using, depending on the state, some type of force to gain entry. You're breaking down a door, a window, but you're gaining unlawful entry, and you have the intent to commit a felony inside or some type of theft. That's a burglary. We already know that many burglars, many of them are on parole, they're on probation, they are ex-cons, and what do many people that have bad elements carry? They carry weapons. Almost everybody out there at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, if you haven't noticed already, they'll have a belt clip in their pocket. Well, many times that corresponds to the attachment to a knife. Sometimes they come in with a crowbar, a screwdriver. Many times they're armed in that ways. They may not be armed with a firearm, but they may be armed with something else. And if it's not that they're armed with an actual weapon, well, they can always use their hands. A lot of times these burglars are on all types of drugs, narcotics. Sometimes they're intoxicated with alcohol. Their judgment is impaired, and when you try to intervene, it could be a bad result for everybody. I worked for a security company many moons ago, and we did our basic patrols where there's 10 properties on a route, sometimes 12 properties, sometimes 15 properties on a route, but we are also tasked with alarm response. So in the area that I worked, if a business had, or even a residence had an alarm that was false and the police responded, that business would get a fine. At that time, it was like $125 per fine. Now, with inflation and everything, maybe $160 worth. Now, those fines have probably went up. Whereas if you pay an alarm company or a security patrol company to respond, you can cut that cost by fractions. And that's what's driving the need in a lot of these communities for security response, just for alarms, and also as part of their regular patrol route. The problem that we have here is many, I want to say almost most, private security officers don't have building search training. They don't have that training that law enforcement has. They don't have that training that military has. Mind you, though, if you hire somebody that's former military that has maybe an MP or infantry, MOS, or something that's related to that, then they would have that skill set. Law enforcement, depending on how much experience they have, depending on where they were trained, most of the time they're going to have building search experience under proper supervision, but most private security officers do not. I worked for a very, very large security company, and we never got any in-house training on how to search buildings. Nothing at all. It would be dependent on the FTO, the field training officer. Sometimes that field training officer didn't have that experience. The officers that trained me, well, it was one sergeant when I was working security, he never trained me on how to do that. And if you're not trained on how to search a building, you might think you're doing it right because you have nobody telling you otherwise. I'll tell you this already. If you're searching a building on your own without any training experience and you think you know what you're doing, the chances are you don't, because you have nobody to base your skill level against. Having said that, I've done some research on this topic, and I landed on an article that was accepted by the Department of Justice Bureau Programs. So the Bureau Programs is basically the research arm of the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, and they fund research opportunities. So if you are connected to a university, sometimes if you're working on your PhD, your thesis, there's grant money that comes in for you to write these articles, these scholarly articles, and some of them are great. So in essence, because the Department of Justice pays for these programs and they're allowing these programs to be accepted into their libraries, in essence, they're vouching for some of the techniques and some of the arguments on there. So essentially what the Department of Justice is saying is this. They recommend, well, they admit that between 94 and 98% of burglary alarms are false. Their strategy is this. Security guards need more training. I'm going to agree to that. Second, alarm response should be localized. And I believe that's true. You shouldn't have one security officer responding to different counties. I mean, that are 50 miles apart, 40 miles apart, even 15 miles apart. They should all be localized, because how are you going to get there on time? And the third, they should be unarmed. Let me say that again. Department of Justice believes that they should be unarmed. Unarmed, okay? Let's talk about that. So I just mentioned when I started this video that it's called a burglary alarm. A burglary is a felony. Dangerous people commit burglaries. They shouldn't be unarmed. Now, my opinion is that if you already have a guard on site, maybe a shopping mall or an outlet, and there's a burglary alarm, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea for an unarmed officer to respond. Just keep your distance. The problem is when you check the door, it might be open, and that's when this burglar might run out, and it might turn into something worse than just a burglary. Hopefully not. But if you're already localized, you're on site already, I don't think it's necessarily evil to observe whether or not there's a break-in. I think at the very minimum, from a safe distance, observe the doors, observe the windows. Are they broken or not? As for you reaching for that door, seeing if it's open, that's it's a leadership decision that your organization has to make. And also, it's a decision that you're gonna have to make as a private security officer. Is it really worth checking that door? Okay, you can call law enforcement. When in doubt, call law enforcement. But there's a time when you might burn your bridges. They don't want to keep responding to these false alarms. And some agencies will not respond to an alarm unless there's a responsible party en route. Many times that can involve the owner of the business, a manager, or an employee. Sometimes that does include security, but not all the time. So ask yourself, is it really worth it? if you're unarmed. Some of you on the channel saying unarmed security are worthless. You guys are not worthless. Guys, stop saying that. I'm not going to block your comment. I'm just going to disagree. There's utility, there's value in everything. Okay, just because you have a gun, that doesn't mean that you're the baddest guy on the block and you can resolve every problem, because almost every situation does not involve being armed. So let's get that out of the way. Feel free to disagree. That's totally fine. Now, even if you're armed security, should you go inside and check? That's up to you. I think at the very least, at least check the door. As for going inside, again, that's a management decision. It's also your decision as well. Like I said, most private security officers who are armed, they're not even trained on how to search a building appropriately. When a law enforcement agency does a building search, they do so usually with a minimum of 2 officers or 2 deputies. Sometimes 5, sometimes 7. Sometimes there's an area unit. Sometimes there's a canine available. Yet you try to go over there by yourself. It can be dangerous, guys. I made a couple of videos, though, on how to search a building, and there's some caveats that come with that. Just give me some time, and I'll put all those videos in the description box below. So let me know what you guys think about this video. Should private security respond to burglary alarms? Should unarmed private security respond to burglary alarms? And if so, what would be the procedure? Because I'll take care, be safe, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue.